where every story is based on truth, and every truth leaves a scar. Today's story is about a woman who gave her husband 20 years of love, only to discover he was secretly planning a wedding with someone else. Stay with me till the end, because this truth will chill you. Subscribe, like, and share, because real stories deserve to be heard. I wasn't expecting the letter. It wasn't even addressed to me. But I opened it anyway. It arrived on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, tucked neatly in our mailbox, nestled between the electric bill and a flyer for discount windows. I didn't recognize the sender's name, but it had Daniel's full name on it. Daniel Reynolds. I smiled to myself as I held the envelope. Probably another birthday invite from his office, I mumbled and tossed it into my kitchen pile. That's the funny thing about betrayal. It doesn't kick the door down. It rings the doorbell, softly, and waits patiently while you let it in. That evening, while cooking his favorite shrimp Alfredo, I remembered the envelope again. I opened it with one hand, stirring the sauce with the other. The paper was thick, cream-colored, classy. My eyes skimmed the header. You are cordially invited to celebrate the wedding of Daniel Reynolds and Chloe Bennett. I stopped stirring. Fingers trembled. The name on the bottom, Daniel Reynolds, was unmistakably his, my husband, the man I married 20 years ago, the man I had just spent $2,800 on a secret anniversary surprise trip to Italy for. For a full minute, I just stood there, letting the pasta boil over. I told myself it was a mistake, a sick joke, an office prank. Maybe it was another Daniel Reynolds. But the venue name, the dress code, the RSVP link, all of it was real. And worst of all, the wedding was scheduled for our anniversary weekend, a date we both swore we'd never forget. I didn't confront him that night. Instead, I watched him eat the pasta I made with trembling hands and fake smiles. I noticed little things I had ignored for months. How he kept his phone face down, how he checked the time during our conversations, how he showered before and after his gym sessions. That night, I sat in bed beside him, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how many lies a person could build and still come home like nothing happened. The next morning, after he left for work, I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed him. He wasn't going to the office. He drove straight to an upscale neighborhood, parked confidently, and walked up to a house with white roses on the porch. He had a key. He entered like he belonged there. I waited 15 minutes before I walked up and peered through the side window. He was there in the kitchen, smiling, and in his arms was a younger woman, maybe 27, blonde, wearing one of his shirts. They kissed. Long, familiar. My knees nearly buckled. I sat in my car outside for nearly 2 hours, replaying every anniversary, every I love you, every night he held me and promised forever. When he returned home that evening, he brought roses. Happy, almost anniversary, he said, smiling, kissing me like a man with no guilt. Next weekend, I have a surprise planned for us. Pack a bag, okay? I nodded and smiled, tears burning the corners of my eyes. Because now I had a plan too. The next few days were a blur. I hired a private investigator. I found out more in a week than I had known in 20 years. Daniel had a second life, a second bank account, a second ring, a second future that did not include me. I found the receipts, the texts, the emails. He was marrying Chloe Bennett at a vineyard outside the city. It was to be a small, exclusive ceremony. He had told her I was his crazy ex-wife who wouldn't let go. He told her we divorced 2 years ago. And yet every night, he lay beside me, kissed me goodnight, whispered, I love you, but here's what he didn't know. I was done being silent. He had no idea what I was about to do next. I stood in front of the bakery that day, holding a box of red velvet cupcakes for Derek, his favorite. It was his birthday. For 20 years, I never forgot. Through cancer scares, miscarriages, even the year we lost our home, I never missed his birthday. Inside, the staff smiled politely as I walked toward the kitchen where Derek had recently started consulting for a catering team. That's where I first saw her. She was younger, prettier, laughing that fake laugh women use when they want to impress a man. My husband. My Derek. I stood frozen as he brushed frosting from her cheek. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked in, placed the cupcakes on the table and said, "Happy birthday, Derek." His face turned pale. The woman blinked, not realizing who I was. "Oh," she said. "You must be his aunt." Derek stepped in, fast. "This is my wife, Emma." The silence after that felt like a funeral. She laughed nervously. "Wait. I thought you said you were divorced." Derek didn't deny it. He didn't defend me. He didn't say a word. I left without another sound. That night, I sat in our living room, alone. Derek didn't come home. When he did, it was morning. He walked in casually, smelling like hotel soap and betrayal. I didn't ask where he was. He finally said, "Emma, we need to talk." I already knew what was coming. "I'm not happy anymore," he said. "I haven't been for a while. I didn't want you to find out like that, but it's time we go separate ways, just like that. 20 years reduced to one cowardly monologue." I asked, "So who is she?" He shrugged. "Her name's Maya. We met at the catering event 3 months ago. It just happened. My marriage didn't just happen. I built it." 2 weeks later, he moved out. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came 3 months later when I got a call from my sister, Emma. "Did you know Derek is getting married this weekend?" To that girl, Maya. It felt like the ground had cracked beneath my feet. He hadn't even told me. I didn't even know the divorce papers were finalized, but something in me snapped, not out of jealousy, but justice. He didn't just move on. He tried to erase me. I went to the venue. I had no plan, no speech, no drama in mind. I just needed to see if it was real. The wedding was at a fancy vineyard 2 hours away. As I walked through the marble archway, I saw him, Derek, in a black tuxedo, standing under the floral arch, smiling like the past 20 years didn't exist. Then I saw her, in a white designer gown. Maya, she didn't know me. But her mother did. Her mother whispered to a guest beside her, "That's his ex-wife. The first one. The one he never invited. The one whose name wasn't mentioned once today." People looked at me, then looked away. Like I was a ghost. I turned to leave. That's when Derek saw me. He walked down the aisle, away from the altar, and whispered sharply, "What are you doing here?" "Watching the movie of our life end without credits?" I replied. He sighed. "You're making this difficult." "No, Derek, you already did." The next day, I did what I should have done months ago. I opened my journal and wrote the first chapter of my story. Not our story. Mine. Because I realized for 2 decades I had been the background character in the story of a man who never intended to be a hero. Now it was my turn to write, my own truth, my own ending. And this time, I wouldn't be the one, left off the guest list. The morning after the wedding, I woke up as someone else. Not Emma the bride, not Emma the hopeful, just Emma, rebuilt on broken glass. But I still didn't know that the real shock hadn't arrived yet. Later that afternoon, I was organizing some old documents when I found an envelope, faded yellow, unmarked, tucked behind a book I rarely touched. The handwriting was familiar. Derek's. My fingers hesitated, but curiosity and dread pulled me in. I opened it. The letter read, "Maya, I don't know how long I can keep pretending. She's starting to notice things. I told her we're over, but she still wears that wedding ring like it means something. Be patient. Soon she'll be gone for good, and we'll be free. Yours, always. D." The floor beneath me seemed to disappear. Maya. Their affair hadn't been going on for 3 months like he said. It had been planned. My marriage wasn't a mistake. It was a cover-up. I wasn't his partner. I was the obstacle they wanted to remove. I sat there with the letter in my hand for what felt like hours. I couldn't cry. I couldn't scream. I just unraveled, silently. Then something shifted inside me. This story, my story, wasn't ending in shame or silence. I called Clara. She was an old friend, a journalist, and a fierce advocate for women betrayed by love and loyalty. I told her everything. The letter, the lies, the wedding that wasn't real, the betrayal that was. She listened, then paused. Emma, if you're willing, I want to tell this story. Not just for you, but for every woman who thinks silence is safer. I took a deep breath. Tell it. Within weeks, Clara's exposé went viral. The bride who wasn't invited. A story of silence, betrayal, and reinvention. Suddenly, my inbox was flooded. Messages from strangers, women, everywhere. You told my story. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for surviving, for all of us who couldn't. I realized this wasn't just about me. It was about us. Every woman who gave everything and got broken promises in return. Rumors started swirling about Derek and Maya. Their picture-perfect fantasy didn't survive the truth. The media pressure, the shame, the spotlight. It was too much. And then, Derek called. Emma, I never meant to hurt you like that. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry, I just said, but you did. And you wrote it down. Silence. You didn't just lose your wife, Derek. You lost the only person who kept your worst secrets safe. I'm no longer the Emma who stood in his shadow. I'm the Emma who lives under her own name. The Emma who turned heartbreak into a headline, pain into power. It was a cold, gray afternoon, the kind that wraps around your skin like silence. I was sipping coffee by the window when I saw a familiar car park across the street. My stomach tightened. Derek. I hadn't seen him since the story broke, since the world knew, since I reclaimed my voice. He stepped out, hesitant. He wasn't the man I remembered. He looked smaller, tired, like someone who realized he'd burned his last safe bridge. I didn't want to open the door, but I did. Emma, he said, voice shaking. Can we talk? I leaned on the door frame. What could you possibly have left to say? He looked down, fingers fumbling with nothing. I lost everything. A part of me wanted to smirk. Another part wanted to cry, but I stayed still. You lost everything the moment you chose to lie, I said. I didn't know what I was doing. With Maya, it just happened. But you, Emma, you were always the stable one, the good one. I didn't think you'd expose you, I interrupted. No, Derek, you didn't think I'd stand up. He shifted uncomfortably. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said. I thought maybe someday we could talk, be friends. I stared at him. Friends don't write letters about how to get rid of you. He winced. That letter, it wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. There was a long pause. People hate me now, he whispered. Everywhere I go, I see judgment in their eyes. I lost my job, Emma. Maya left, said I brought shame to her name. I felt nothing. I didn't write that story to punish you, I said. I wrote it so I could breathe again, so no one else would choke on secrets the way I did. He finally looked me in the eyes. You're not the same person anymore, he said. No, I agreed. I'm finally the person I was meant to be. He walked away without another word. And I closed the door, not just to him, but to everything he represented. Months passed. The story continued to ripple. Clara was invited to conferences. I was asked to speak at women's forums. Me, the woman who was once too quiet to confront the truth. Now I stood on stages and said, sometimes survival looks like silence, but healing sounds like speaking. I launched a podcast, Uninvited, a space for women to share the truths they weren't allowed to say out loud. It became more than I ever imagined. One day, a young girl sent me an email. She had run away from a controlling relationship after hearing my episode. You saved my life, she wrote. But the truth was, she saved her own. I just handed her a mirror. As for me, I moved to a quiet town near the coast. I wake up early, I write, I speak. And I never apologize for being too loud, too bold, or too much. Because I know now, being too much for someone small isn't a flaw. It's a sign you've outgrown your cage. This wasn't the life I planned, but it's the one I chose, and it's mine.